Hi, so I'm Kershaw. I'm the head of digital transformation for the Wildlife Trust. So I work on behalf of the Wildlife Trust movement to help the federation of 47 independent charities make the most of digital, looking specifically at how we increase our digital confidence, how we have strategies around digital, make the most of data, and increase our skills around digital technologies. All in all, to basically embrace a digital culture as part of Transformation 4, which is our root and branch digital transformation as part of our strategy. So effectively, the Wildlife Trust has been using variations on artificial intelligence for quite a while. We have got a little bit of a background across, we've got a big innovative way of working because we've got 46 different organizations. So people are trying lots of different things. And we've been using machine learning across a number of different projects. So this is a slide that I quite like using because it says the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. One of my favorite William Gibson quotes, because there already are quite a lot of pioneering approaches being taken across the Federation. So we have things like Bugs Matter in Kent, which is identifying species that are being hit by cars, bug species, I should say. We have laser scanning and eDNA being used in Warwickshire in order to help with some of their river restoration projects. We have acoustic monitoring going on in Somerset Wildlife Trust on the Avalon Marshes. And we have one of our really big ambitious projects, which is Surrey Wildlife Trust Space for Nature, which is a kind of AI machine learning on habitat data from Earth observation satellites. So really kind of interesting project where they're using ground truthing with citizen scientists in order to check the credibility of the models they're using to identify habitats from satellite imagery. So there's a real mix of things. In terms of generative AI, though, there's some kind of specific uses that have been found. So once again, Warwickshire Wildlife Trust have been quite interesting around this. They've been doing some work around what rewilded landscapes might look like in the future. This is something that's really hard to get across in a lot of ways. What's going to happen in 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, when you've actually started kind of the process of changing a landscape. So he's been using Bing AI in order to generate some potential images of what you might get if you kind of fund a project. I also just wanted to quickly show you, though, another image, which is these are in use from Lancashire Wildlife Trust, who have also been generating images. Now, these have been generated more for fun, but they show you a bit of an issue with content creation, which is, as you can see on the left-hand side image, we have a horse-headed, I don't even know what it's meant to be, wading bird of some kind that's been generated. The right-hand side is Wigan wildlife. It is a bit of a joke image, but you can see that is meant to be a marsh tit sat on a Wigan pie. It looks a bit more like a quiche, which shows you there's a bit of an issue here in terms of some of the content creation. It's not great at identifying species, and it won't always generate quite what you're after in all situations. So there's a lot of ways we're using it. It tends towards the machine learning side, but we are also using generative AI for things where we might just struggle with a use case of visualizing something in the future. We might be using it for generating some content, getting some ideas. Coding is quite a solid use case here at the Wildlife Trusts. If we're looking at things like statistical analysis or wanting to kind of code in Python or R, we may well use it to check the code, debug things, and kind of generate new code snippets. So that is some of the kind of more solid use cases that we're seeing here at the Wildlife Trust. I suppose my first bit of advice is think about it before you do it. Like with any technology adoption, we started by having a discussion at one of our Leaders' Day, which is where we bring together all the kind of chief execs, directors, and strategic implementation leads from across the Federation. And we started by thinking, what is AI and generative AI for us? Do we have a thought around it? What's our kind of thesis around our use of it? And so this was basically what came out of quite a big discussion and workshop where we said it's increasingly vital. So we know it's coming, we know we're going to use it, but using it ethically is really crucial for us. That's something that has to align with our values. So we've got to consider, how might it be used for misinformation? How might it impact on the mental health of staff and people who are using it or are concerned about it? And what's the environmental impact that it might have? So we kind of came to a bit of a consensus, which is not necessarily a hugely original one. Loads of people have come up with this, but basically it was always having a human in the loop, always ground truthing, always making sure that it's an assistant to what we're trying to do and it's adding real value, because the carbon implications can be really high. So we have to make sure it's adding value above and beyond doing it in a different way. But always it's the secondary thing. It's always the human being who's taking the lead on everything. So we started by working out what that might be. And we also looked at what the biggest risks for us were likely to be from our use of generative AI. So hallucinations is a huge one. It will generate misinformation for us, and that's really potentially damaging to our credibility. So we've got to be really aware of that and look at how we build in guardrails. Security, obviously, with some of these big models, they're not storing data in the EU. We can't get information back out of them once we've put it in it. So security is a big risk. We don't know where it's going. And then obviously carbon and the carbon usage. We know it's really increasing the pressure on, for example, the US grid at the moment. So this is a carbon intensive technology we need to really consider. And overall, consider how it ties into our kind of reputation and the kind of trust that we know people have trust in us. We are very, data led. We make sure that we base our approaches on research and evidence. So making sure that we're not putting things into the public domain that are not true is really, really critical. So I just wanted to kind of show you a quick example of like how that kind of assessment of AI works for us at the Wildlife Trust. So this is the example that I've shown you some images of, which is creating images of rewilded landscapes to support funding bids. So having a little bit of a think about it before we use it. Now we did use it, that has been used for real in funding bids, the Warwickshire one, not the Lancashire one. But effectively thinking around ethical reputational risks. So is there a risk around copyright? Are we making sure we're using models which have been trained on kind of images that haven't been basically stolen from the web? Is there a risk on over-reliance on AI-generated content? Are we going to become less creative in developing our landscapes if we're using prompts and AI instead of really thinking it through? So we have to kind of think this approach. And then specificity hallucinations, which is basically it takes a while and a lot of different prompts to generate those images in a way that are really credible for us. It's not great at creating species that are really specific, and it'll generate too many of them because it doesn't know species behavior. So you might be trying to generate one red kite, it might give you 10. That might not be appropriate for what you're doing. And so we have like some clear mitigation here, which is basically agree when we're going to use it. Don't use it for everything. Use it in specific use cases where you have to produce this image quite quickly and there isn't another way to do it. And make sure you have a human in the loop, an expert who's reviewing and looking at what you're doing. So kind of creating these frameworks so that you're not saying don't use it. We're just saying when you do use it, here are some considerations and here's what you might want to look at. I'm not going to go through this in detail, you'll be pleased to know, but we worked with DataKind and an AI learning circle that was actually international to come up with an AI risk assessment. So we've got a whole number of different tasks and scenarios, and then we've got some examples of the kind of risks, the kind of challenges, the kind of safety criteria we need to put in place, and then the guardrails and mitigation for each one. So this is a start of a 10 for anyone using generative AI in the Wildlife Trust. You'll be able to find it in the DataKind playbook when that comes out in a couple of months, or hopefully quite soon actually. But we use this as the basis. We talk about guardrails, so we've got things like an AI statement. I'm only going to just quickly show you what this is. But this is very just like, think about why you're using it, think about data privacy. One of the resources we have for internally within the Wildlife Trust is we also have a wiki, which is a kind of internal place where people can find out a bit more about interesting resources around the kind of AI. So TED Talks, links, documents, information, and we have a shared intranet called WildNet, and we put all our information on here. So if people are looking to start thinking about AI, they can go onto the wiki and see a bit of information that's created by the AI user group, by myself, by other people who are involved. So we try and support staff in a number of different ways. But effectively, that's how we're kind of starting to support it. So the approach would be make sure you've thought about why you're using it, how you're using it in the same way as anything else you're going to use, but then provide a bit of guidance for staff on what are the guardrails you might need. Yours might be the same as ours. It's probably quite likely you're going to see hallucination, security, risk of reputation and carbon as some of yours. So just start to think about, is it the right tool for the situation you're trying to do? And then always make sure someone's checking it. So that's my big advice. But also try it out. Be curious. Have a little bit of a go with it and have a play, because that's the way you'll work out how these systems actually work.